Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Welcome back, Peter. Great to see you.
George.
Happy Friday.
We got this all worked out now.
I know, we're getting into the rhythm of it. It's good. It's fun.
George, there's a lot going on out there. I didn't sleep at all last night. I woke up at like 1 and I was up until maybe 5:30. I went to sleep for another half an hour after that. I was thinking about this horrible earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Been thinking about this horrible war in the Ukraine and how people are suffering everywhere. Yeah. We were suffering before all of these events that I just mentioned. We're suffering even more now. Today, Russia's threatening to increase oil prices by cutting production on the oil reserves that it controls. And so it's getting intricate there. Tensions with China, not so good. Everything's flaring up everywhere. I feel like we don't have a handle on things as good as we should. And more than ever, I feel like the things that we can control are ourselves. We can control our response to things. We can control our reaction, our action, the action that we take.
Yeah.
You know, that's really it. Like, other than that, we can't control anything. I mean, look at the world around us. So it's really been impacting me the past few days. I think a lot about this stuff, and I believe more than ever, we have to take more control about the action that we take and how we react to things.
Yeah.
You know, events are neutral. If you're successful at managing yourself and how the world impacts you, you would theoretically react neutral to any event that happens. Events themselves aren't positive or negative. It's only your reaction to them that is.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to get good at that and get better at that because I feel like we'll have a better chance of just getting through all of this if we can control our reactions and then control the action that we take.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, it makes me think of, there's a quote that I can't remember the actual, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially there are decades that are contained within a year. Years that pass and it seems like nothing's going on. And then, 1 or 2 years just have so much that's occurring within a single year or a single quarter. And
that's what's happening right now.
We're in the midst of that right now. 1917 was one of those. And I feel like we're in a very similar kind of World War I era of things.
And we have been for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Technologically, socially, politically. I mean, it's a compression chamber, and everything is happening to greater degrees, with more frequency, with greater impact, with greater meaning, and it's important. We are in such an important, pivotal time. This AI stuff that all of a sudden we're hearing so much more about.
Yeah, every day.
This is going to be the single biggest thing that turns us upside down on our asses. You watch over the next 10 years. These technological advancements, AI, the crypto thing they're going to figure out with the regulations and whoever the last men are standing. But I tell you, this stuff is going to be big. And the world that you were used to living in before, it's not going to be the same as the world that you're going to live in for the rest of your life. Oh, and the rest of your life, by the way, we're all going to live longer.
Right.
Maybe not me, because I'm at the point in life where, whatever happened already. But for our kids and our grandkids, I think people are going to start living into their 90s and 100s way more frequently and way more regularly. This is what I'm reading about, advancements in technology. They discovered an enzyme which can kill cancer growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're testing that now. I mean, this stuff is big. I always think when it comes to healthcare, I think about, and I can't remember the movie, but it was in one of these Mission to Mars movies where they were trying to heal people. They put you in a tanning bed device of sorts, and then you got scanned for cellular deficiencies. And once they locate the deficiencies, the machine then scans again and imparts the quantum cellular pieces that then heal you right there on the table. I mean, I think we're headed to that eventually. I imagine a world where you can lay in a tanning bed, get scanned, and get healed. Scar tissue, cancer cells, illnesses. I think there's going to be ways to do all of that. I mean, they're working on it.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, and
But
then
it's going to be a different world.
Yeah, and then I think the question is, how do you deal with that economically and societally? And because as people live longer, you need support systems and infrastructure and all that kind of thing. So
Right.
it's a big question.
You need all of that stuff.
It'll be interesting.
You need more housing if we're living longer.
Absolutely.
You do. We have a housing shortage now. What's going to happen when people live into their hundreds like regularly? There's that's even less inventory coming onto the market and available. Man, this thing is such a big problem, this housing shortage, and no one takes the right action. I mean, there's people trying, they're taking little bites of the apple, and it's cute, doesn't really move the needle, it gets some votes maybe, but we really need a wholesale revamping of so many different parts of our society. The housing shortage is one of them. We have to have an environment where we can build more housing and so many other things, but it is a compressed time. We're in a compression chamber. It's amazing.
Yeah, and as we move forward, we'll have to draw on those the universal truths that we have, surrounding our world.
I love talking about universal truths.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that because we talk a lot about real estate. What a coincidence! Those segues. We talk about real estate all the time. That's primarily our focus on this podcast in the past 2 years. And you've been wildly successful with your multifamily investments. But what are some fundamental truths from that portfolio that you've built that you have now been able to apply in other asset classes or in other parts of your life? Like, basically, what does it take to become a master investor? That's what I'm asking.
So, George, I think patience is the biggest thing that I've learned that we really need, because nothing happens overnight, especially in real estate. I like saying that.
Yeah.
But it's really so true. Now, we have to bust our asses every day and sprint and grind it out like there's someone chasing us with a machete down a street. Like, we have to run that fast.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we will have to have packed in so much in our 8 or 10 or 12 hours that we worked, and understand that we need to have this patience, because the rest of the world may not be at our level. They may not be at our speed. I get all of my work done at the end of the day, and then I start calling around and saying, all right, is everybody ready? We ready for this tomorrow, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever? And sure enough, I get, we have to get permits in. We have to get application packages in. We're not ready. We need consent from this board. We need consent from that person. So nothing happens overnight. I try to make it happen overnight so that I'm not the one where everyone's waiting on me. I get my work done so that I'm waiting on all of them. So I think what I'm really saying is we have to hustle and grind it out on a daily basis, like with such a sense of urgency that people look at us like we're nuts. But on a macro level, we have to have the patience and the maturity and the perspective to know that things will come together. But I never want someone to be waiting on me. I never want someone to say, hey, I got all my stuff done. I'm waiting on Siegel. That is something that I will never allow to have happen. I get my stuff done. I grind through my to-do lists and my agenda every day. I expect everyone on my teams that I work with to do the same. I don't want anyone waiting on us. I have a big hustle culture in our company. Yeah. And it's very important. Sense of urgency is everything. We have to maintain that on a daily basis. But we got to be patient. When the day is over, we have to know it may take another week or two or month or two, whatever, but it's not going to be because of us.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of, I listen a lot to Andrew Huberman, the neuroscientist, and he talks about dopamine and serotonin and how they work together. And basically what you're talking about is that on a philosophical level of like patience and hunger being two sides of the same coin.
They coexist together.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Like most diametrically opposed concepts, good and evil. Hot and cold, rain and sunshine. I mean, you can't have a rainbow without there being rain. Oh, did I just say that? But for real, you can't. I mean, there's so many things that are diametrically opposed, but they just exist together, and it's part of life.
I saw somewhere, I think it was Bloomberg the other day, that there was 5 million businesses were created in 2022, new businesses, like small businesses.
Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. I think it's great for the most part.
For the most part, yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I want to ask you is I think that's a 44% increase from 2019. So it's a pretty big bump. But I think there's a roughly 50% failure rate for new businesses, something along those lines.
The number is big. I don't know if it's 50. I don't know if it's 80. I don't know over what period of time this data is taken. But It's a big number. Most new businesses fail. Most new businesses are undercapitalized. Most new businesses are started by people without experience. All of these things. So pick your poison, but you have a lot of that. It's a low barrier to entry environment these days, culturally, socially. Entrepreneurship and being a small business owner is like a trendy thing.
It is.
And people, with the way the labor markets are, people are very quick to break away from a more traditional employment situation and start their own business. George, that part I think is great. But if you're going to do it, I'd like to see people do it with thought to capitalization, cash, credit, money, investors, having the right capital structure. I'd like to people give thought to legislative and regulatory risks and concerns. We see it in biotech, we see it in pharma, we see it in housing, we see it in so many industries where the legislature is changing very rapidly because people can't afford medicine and they can't afford housing and they can't afford things. So, this is part of our landscape today. I'd like to see people give more thought to their particular skill set and level of expertise. I mean, George, I see people opening up businesses that they have no business opening up that business, but they have no background or experience. It doesn't mean that's going to automatically fail, but it's just going to make it tougher. So you have to have the other things to offset your lack of specific skill set. It's a competitive marketplace. Let the best survive. The markets are going to award the winners and they're going to kill the losers.
Yeah.
And if all these new businesses are opening and people are starting new businesses, God bless. I hope everyone's successful, but not everyone is going to be, because not everyone is ready and not everyone is capitalized and not everyone has done their research and their homework, all that stuff.
Yeah. Do you think it's your adherence to those tenets, doing your research, doing your homework that has allowed you to be successful in your businesses and have staying power there?
Yeah, sure. I never do anything without a plan, without giving it thought. I don't just jump into a volcano,
Right.
As fun as that sounds and as romantic and dramatic as that sounds, to just quit a job and just open a business. We're just going to roll all the dice and open a bit it's great. I encourage people to open businesses, but I encourage you to do it the right way. George, with business and investing, as with any discipline, there's a right way and there's a wrong way. There's basic fundamental principles. There's things that you can practice. There's things that you can learn and skills that you can acquire to make yourself more successful at business. So I just encourage people to get a batting coach, get a business coach and learn some business skill sets that are particular to the business that you want to open up.
Do you think it's more important to start the business first and then find a coach to help you along? Or do you think it's better to find a coach first? Or do you think it's a combination of the two?
It's a combination. You don't want to have analysis paralysis and be under a coaching situation when you really have had enough of it and you need to get open for business already.
Yep.
So probably both concurrently, open the doors, get the coaching, get going, get selling.
Yeah, totally.
Nothing happens without selling. You got to sell.
Yeah. The most important skill. Amazon is expanding Prime. Do you hear about this? That they're allowing subscribers to use their services like in other websites and things like that. And, everyone loves to try and reinvent the wheel, come up with this kind of paradigm breaking idea for their business. But here Amazon is taking, a resource they already have, leveraging it for a cash flow opportunity. And it made me think of, you've brought up your plumbing business before and other contracting ventures. Are there examples from your life or your colleagues' life that, this kind of reminds you of?
Sure. Starting from scratch with anything is difficult, costly, time consuming, and maybe not going to be as successful as starting with a variation on something that you already have in your possession and under your control. So for example, you and I have spoken before about how I've gotten into some of the trades businesses, and I own a plumbing company and I'm about to own an electrical company. And people would say to me, well, why did you do that? And I'd say, well, I own real estate. I have to service my buildings. Now I have a plumber who will respond to my call. But the truth is that part of it never panned out for me because the plumbing business is so busy on its own without my office calling for service calls that it was just a great investment. Why was it a good investment? Because I understood the business. I get the space. I'm not new to it. I live it every day because I manage a portfolio of real estate. So I understand how impossible it is to get a quality plumber to come when you call, right? I think everyone out there can agree. It's like, it's impossible,
Absolutely.
right? So I'm now in a business that's supply constrained with a lot of demand. I'm in the plumbing business. And when the phone rings to that plumbing business, they're going to respond. They're going to charge a lot of money for it because not a whole lot of people are out there for consumers to call. The trades are a suffering industry. Yeah. And not just with plumbing and electric, but all the trades, HVAC, carpentry, auto mechanics. I mean, all this stuff is under attack. Mm-hmm. And so don't be surprised when you go to get a lube job at your local auto mechanic and it's $1 gabillion, or don't be surprised when you have a leaky toilet and it's $1 gabillion, because that's where the world is headed. Yeah. Because we taught our society 30, 40 years ago it was way more important to go to college than it was to vocational school and learn a trade. Mm-hmm. So now, fast forward to 2023, there is no one that's going into the trades, very few. Mm-hmm. And certainly not at the same rates that we need them to, and certainly not the same rates historically that they were. So there is a lack of people going to the trades. There is a lack of supply for the trades, and there's nothing but demand. So my plumbing business was a strategic move that ended up being a great investment because I understood that it was a supply-constrained market. It wasn't a reach or a stretch for me to do it, George. And I think for that reason, it's a great example as to why you stick to what you know and stick within your inner circle of what you already have. It was very simple for me to add on the plumbing business on top of my other businesses. I'll give you another example. Yeah. In property management, last year, 2022, the multifamily market was very, very inventory tight. There was nothing to buy. We didn't buy anything last year. So what did we do to grow? We instituted new policies and plans at the property management level. We came up with new ways to service our residents and offer them amenities that they were willing to pay a fair price for. That generates revenue. Now, I don't need a new property management company to do that. I don't need to make an investment in some other person or place or asset to do that. We already have a property management company. All we had to do was talk about it and get the logistics worked out with our staff and also with our residents on how to provide greater service and get greater revenue benefit from that. Everyone was happy. So there are things that we can do. If you own a car, you can become a Lyft or an Uber driver to make more money. I mean, it's that simple an example.
Opportunities, yeah.
It's that simple, right? You already own the car. You add on more revenue by becoming a Lyft operator. It's that easy. We already own a property management company. It's that simple to just start offering new amenities that people are willing to pay for. And this is what you have to do in times like this, and always. But this is what your question is. You have to do this kind of stuff.
In 2022, farmland prices in the Midwest jumped like 20% in Q3.
Yeah.
The Real Deal was reporting that like 24 professional athletes getting into a 104-acre farm in Iowa. Like, I'm hearing all these things about farm investments.
They're smart.
Is this interest in farmland here to stay? Is it a short-term thing? Like, what's your take on it?
It's completely here to stay. Farmland investing is completely here to stay. It's a relatively new asset class. It's always been an asset class, but it was so overlooked. It was so boring. It was so unknown until we started having food supply shortages, until Bill Gates started buying up 80% of the available farmland in our country, until T. Boone Pickens bought up all the land that was farmable that had water rights. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at what these guys are doing. Look at what Goldman Sachs, just those three examples, Goldman, Bill Gates, and T. Boone Pickens. Farmland, water rights, natural resources, oil, right? All the land gives access to those resources. Mm-hmm. Food, water, oil, just to name a few.
Yeah.
Right? It's becoming less and less and less, and never before has the old phrase, land, they ain't making more of it. Never before has that been more true. So yeah, I think this is completely here to stay. I think that these athletes who pooled their money together and bought some farmland, great idea, guys. I love seeing athletes make smart investment choices. Makes me really happy because these guys earn a lot of money in most cases, and like to see them do something smart with it. Yeah. And I'll tell you what else. A few years ago, there wasn't an ability for the common investor to also participate in farmland investing. But now, like these other platforms have evolved for like multifamily and storage and whatever, there's these platforms now for farmland investing. So you can get into a farmland investment deal with a relatively small amount of money.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, if the barrier to entry has changed with that. Yeah,
it has. Yeah. With everything, the barrier of entry has changed over the past 5 years, as with everything, every asset class, every investment type, every job that you want to get into. Like, we need more people to invest. It's now easier. We need more people to come to the workforce and work all these different jobs. Their openings are there. Like, we need you, so it's easier and people can seek it out. But like with anything, you have to seek out an experienced sponsor or partner to put your money with, regardless of what the platform is. If it's an internet platform or if it's a private individual, you need to have someone with experience guiding the ship and local knowledge and expertise in that particular area. So always look for that. But absolutely, farmland investing is here to stay. I'm really worried. We talked about what the future looks like. If we can't secure our food supply,
yeah, it's scary.
The future is very scary. So, I don't know where this all goes with a few people owning most of the food supply land, but it's going to be a contentious ride, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that effect with Ukraine, and especially I think Africa has been particularly affected by Ukraine's supply chain problems because, Ukraine provides so much food for everyone in Europe, everyone in Africa.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Daniel Iles recently posted a TikTok highlighting how the tax codes, rent control, eviction moratoriums have all reduced the amount of landlords to like 700, like really low numbers in the country. So few places to rent.
Ireland's a land of public housing providers.
That's wild. Do you see a way out for Ireland? Like, it just seems so bleak in the way that this guy was painting the picture.
Oh, my Irish brothers. I love them all. What a beautiful country. It is a mess in this one regard over there, and probably a few others, but it's a mess over there because the government has taken control of providing the housing. And, that's not government's best and most efficient use of its time and resources. So it doesn't work great. And there's been negative and unintended consequences. There's supply shortages. There's housing unaffordability, all in this environment where the government takes control and regulates. I mean, they regulate the crap out of their country when it comes to housing.
Yeah.
And it's a tough situation. The answer, George, there has to be a wholesale revamp of the whole system. Mm-hmm. I mean, change requires change.
Yeah.
We have to put more housing providers in the private sector. We have to put them in control of more inventory. With maybe some reasonable economic and legislative oversight from the government. But, it doesn't have to be a free-for-all.
Yep.
But we just got to get it out of the government's hands and into the private sector's hands. And they have to build more supply.
Yeah.
Nothing happens unless you build more supply, but they have to allow it to happen.
Totally.
First thing is wholesale revamp of all the policies, rules, and regulations which govern housing.
Yeah.
Second is you have to be open and inviting for people to come in and take risk and build. And over time, you can solve the problem. It's not going to happen overnight, but over time, George, nothing happens overnight.
Yeah.
Over time, Ireland can address it, but you have to have a willingness to address it. There really hasn't been a willingness in Ireland because it's very left over there. Mm-hmm. They run their country the way they feel is best for their people.
Yeah.
But as an outsider looking in, I think they need a wholesale revamp, and they need to really find ways to build more housing supply and fix this. And the governments historically aren't able to do that. They need the private investor and private risk taker to come in and get involved.
Yeah. I'll have to fact check this. I'll cut it out if it's incorrect. But when I was in Scotland, I had a friend living over there for a while, and he was saying how all of the land there is, or like 90% of it, is privately owned. So even the parks are private parks that people use like a public park, like Central Park, like a similar setup. So it just has I'd be curious how that affects the real estate over there. I'll look into that and maybe get back to you.
You know what, George? I think one way that not just Ireland, but all of these states and cities everywhere are going to find land to build on is repurposing public parks.
Yeah.
Mark my words. I can think of one town very close to where you and I work that has a few parks, and one of them just can't seem to get out of its own way in terms of its public works, and it just always has stuff going on, and crime and garbage and whatever. And it's a whole city block. And if they converted that to a public housing project and made it nice, what a success that would be. I don't know that we need another park where this park is. So I think you're going to see cities look at their own parks and public land and see if there's any opportunities to rezone and build housing.
A while back, I think maybe a year ago, you were talking about how you talk to yourself. And I was wondering, do you still talk to yourself?
All the time, every day. People think I'm nuts.
Yeah.
My daughter thinks I'm nuts. My wife, I'm sure still does, but I mean, she's used to it now. In the shower, I talk to myself. She says, "Who are you talking to?" As I walk by, I'm like, no one. Just leave me alone.
So how do you use self-talk for success? How do you use that tool?
I get in the game. I got to get myself in the game, man. We're so busy. We're so distracted. We have so much going on in our days. Everybody, all of us. There's no time to think about what you have to do. There's no time to think about what you have to say when you walk in the door and see the person that you're having the meeting with. We don't have any time to prepare. I got to get myself in the game. The way I do it is I talk to myself. I hit myself with conversation I'm with the person who I'm about to negotiate with or argue with or meet with, and I'm trying to find all the different angles. I explore all the different possibilities of things that they might say in response. It's like a big choose your own adventure book for me.
Right.
And I'm constantly playing out every possible avenue that the conversation could go, and I'm preparing myself. I don't want the first time that I'm hearing something or thinking about something to be when I'm in the meeting face to face. I want to have thought about it or heard it before I get to the meeting so that I'm not thrown off, so that I have a reasonable response that I can give quickly without delaying and thinking and I don't know and rolling my eyes and looking like a moron.
Right.
I don't want to be unprepared. So I try to prepare myself, talking to myself. Man, it gets me in the game and it gets me there quickly.
Yeah, self-talk for me is also mandatory, especially mood regulation.
Sure, mood regulation. It's such mood reg. So important. If you're in a bad mood, if something happened, if you're not particularly feeling your best today, you can psych yourself into it. You can psych yourself into it. You can psych yourself out of it.
Yeah, totally.
It's all here, and you got to have the right mindset, and you got to have the right tools to get yourself. Look, we can choose our reaction to things. We can choose to be happy. We can choose to be sad. We can choose to let things bother us. We can choose to move forward, even though it bothers us, right? It's all a choice.
Yeah.
But you have to harness that skill and you have to get good at it. I talk myself into it. I yell at myself. I talk to myself. I pretend like I'm my adversary. I pretend like I'm my teammate. I figure it all out. And then I'm a little bit more prepared, or hopefully a lot more prepared. So important to do, George, you're right. Not only for business and meetings and stuff, but even for your moods and your day-to-day life with your family and friends. So good.
So every Christmas, I get a big stack of index cards from somebody because they know that's how I live my life. Every day, it's just index card.
I don't think I knew this about you.
What's that?
I don't think I knew this about you.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll apply those things to a calendar or a digital format, but index cards are the way that I really get shit done. So I love checklists, and I wanted to know if you're going to make a checklist of criteria that an asset or a business has to meet before you invest $1, what would be on that checklist?
Ooh, good question. For me, I have to have a few boxes checked. Here's the list in no particular order, okay, because I'm winging this here with you.
Yep.
Number one, I need to know that the legislative and regulatory environment is going to be okay for my business or my investment. Number two, George, I need to know that locationally or geographically, there's no impediments. So I want to be in a well-located area. If it's a piece of real estate, obviously location. But if it's a business, can it work remotely? Can I farm out labor to India or somewhere overseas where labor is less expensive? I'm always looking at locational and geographical advantages. Number three, I want to make sure that I'm reducing my competitive risks. I want to be in a high barrier to entry business. If it's a piece of real estate, I want to make sure no one can build the same thing next to me. If it's another business or a company, I want to make sure that no one else can just wake up tomorrow and start the same company up and compete with me. So I'm looking for patents. I'm looking for supply constraints. I'm looking for moratoriums on issuing new permits and licenses, right? These are all the things that if I'm in and someone else wants to get in, it's going to be harder for them to get in if they're not able to get a permit or license. It's going to be harder for them to come in and compete with me if they can't build a building next to mine to compete with me. So I'm always looking for a competitive advantage and a high barrier to entry once I'm already in the door. And then fourth, George, this is the biggest one. I have to be in a high demand market. I have to know that what I'm selling is a need, not a want. I want to make sure that my product or service has demand for it day in and day out without me even like trying to spend money on marketing or advertising or like figuring out what the market is. Like I have to wake up and know that there's going to be demand for my product or service. Otherwise, I need to choose a new business. We're talking about the 5 million new businesses that started up in 2022.
Yeah.
Right? How many of them started up without any idea of what the demand for their product or service is?
Yeah.
A lot. A lot,
Absolutely.
right? You'd be surprised, but I think a lot. I think people just get into business thinking, oh, they'll come. Customers will come. It's so competitive to get customers. It costs money to acquire customers. Like, I don't want to have a high CAC, customer acquisition cost. I want to just roll out of bed, show up to my office, and like the cash register starts to ring.
Yep.
Has to be a business where you're selling needs and not wants. Energy, housing, electric vehicles, all these electric vehicles sold. They have nowhere to charge them.
Yeah.
That's a need. Explore that. What's not a need? Luxury brands, anything luxury. Luxury, it's funny, George, luxury isn't built for the wealthy. Luxury is built for the middle class. That's who really wants to spend money on luxury items.
I like that take.
It's a crazy thing if you think about it. Who do you see walking around with Chanel and Gucci and the brands? It's not wealthy people.
It's people that are aspiring to be wealthy or,
That's
appear
right.
wealthy. Yeah, that's true.
That's right.
Wow.
So I'd rather sell a need than a want. And it's the biggest thing on my list. I have to know that there's a high demand for my product or service. Without that, I'm just hoping that I'm going to be able to sell. Without that, I'm just praying that someone's going to come knock on my door or call me for a sale.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to happen. So that's what I would recommend to people.
You've written about how the ability to push through fear, effectively communicate, problem solve, those are greater determinants to you for success than just intelligence. Yeah. As this year has gone on, and last year and the year before, there's a lot of fear. We're surrounded by fear. What are ways that we can develop the ability to push through that fear and succeed despite all this uncertainty that we're surrounded by?
We have nothing but uncertainty in today's world. You got to get your mind right. You got to get your body right. You have to have skill sets that give you confidence. Confidence will suppress fear. Confidence will allow you to move forward in the presence of there also being fear. Like, fear never really goes away. It's just how we deal with it. It's just how we let it impact us. So confidence, to me, is a big way that I prevent fear from impacting me.
I was listening to a podcast with Lane Norton. He's a bodybuilder. And he talks about how your body reacts to anxiety and excitement. It's the same thing physiologically. But we register it different with the story we tell ourselves. So like that, when he used to get hyped up for a meet, he would feel this anxiety, but eventually he started to tell himself, well, no, this is good. This is what it means to be alive. I'm excited to do this. And so it would shift that mindset, even though it's the same physiological response. It shifted to how he interpreted it, which is interesting.
For people that are bogged down with fear all the time, in the absence of any other skill that they have, throw the light switch. Getting past your fear and pushing through it is the flick of a switch.
Yeah.
Imagine you just throw the light switch in a dark room and now there's light. You got to do the same thing with fear.
Yeah.
You got to just throw the switch and coexist with it. Don't let it impact you.
Yeah.
It's a choice. It's a choice. We can choose our reaction to things that we're afraid of. We can choose our response to things or events that happen to us, which make us scared. We can choose that response.
Yeah.
Throw the light switch, stick out your chest, walk right through it. You do it one time, you're good for the rest of your life. All it takes is that first time. You got to throw the switch.
So that's what I got today, Peter. Anything else you want to touch on before we head out? Anything that's been on your mind? You sent me that thing about the Kuwait thing. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but
with all the tires strewn out in the desert.
Yeah.
It was an amazing. So it was you'll put an image up over my head so our viewers can see it. It was an image of the deserts of Kuwait, riddled with tires, old rubber tires that they didn't put underground in a landfill. They just put them on the surface and in these little organized patterns and pockets.
Yeah.
And that's just where the tires go to die. And there's miles and miles and miles of dead tires in a desert in these piles. It's an amazing sight. I had no idea about this.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it makes sense. You're like, what do you do with rubber? Like all these tires, like you can't just keep digging them up. All these countries ship them to Kuwait, and Kuwait takes them in. I guess there's some economics there. Someone pays someone, but they send their tires there. Maybe no one's going to live there, so we'll let the tires live there. I think it's a smart use of otherwise unusable land.
Space, yeah.
Yeah, but just bananas. And I'm sure there's environmental impacts. They're sitting there roasting in the sun. They're probably giving off emissions of some kind as they degrade and break down. I don't know what all that looks like, but if please make a comment below and tell us.
Yeah, see what the fans have to say. Well, thanks so much, Peter, and have a good trip. You're going away next week, and I'll see you next week.
I'm away this week. Yeah, we got the Super Bowl this weekend. Nice. Our Eagles are going to be
I forgot to congratulate you. I know you're very excited about that.
I am excited. I'll be at the game in Arizona.
Hell yeah.
And, go Birds. What can I say? It's very exciting. I thought I could die a happy man 5 years ago after the Eagles beat the Patriots. Oh, that was so beautiful. Philly. The Philly special got the Patriots. That was one of the most satisfying moments in life, watching that happen. But I think we got a good shot at beating the Chiefs. I mean, Mahomes is a magician. That guy is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think our Eagles have a good chance.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, enjoy it, and I'll see you when you get back.
Thank you.
All right, take care. If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a comment or review. You can follow us on TikTok and Twitter at Siegel Cap, and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.